Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Got a pretty interesting little quad here. This is the Eachine Twig 115 HD. Comes with this really nice, the typical Eachine case that we've been expecting from a lot of their smaller mini quads. In the case, we have the drone itself, little bag with some extra props, a little screwdriver, some extra hardware, things that you might need to maintain this thing, in a little silicone, little foam battery mat here, a controller for the FPV camera, and a little instruction card. So the drone here, the Eachine Twig 115, this looks a little bit different than the way it comes out of the box, and I'll tell you why. The reason it looks like this now is because I've spent a lot of time making this thing not suck. It flies okay out of the box. Not good, not great, but it's acceptable. It works. On 2S and 3S, it works. This thing is actually a really nice quad if you spend about another $20 on it to do the upgrades that I have done to this model. This thing flies really, really well now. And the video quality that comes out of it, it's pretty good. It's, obviously it's not GoPro quality because that is the gold standard and it's not a GoPro, but I'd say we're at least 60% of the way there. The Caddx Baby Turtle that's in this is your FPV and HD camera. It actually works really well. It works a lot better than a lot of the other HD FPV camera combinations I've looked at in the past. It's not quite as good as the Tarsier, but it's a lot easier to use, and it has a really wide field of view, and I really kind of like the way it looks. So, a little quick overview of the quad. These props, these are not the props that it comes with. The props that comes with it are not all that great. The motors are Eachine branded 1105 5200 kV motors. The finish on them is okay. It looks like somebody just rattle canned white on there, but they perform pretty well. The canopy is this really hard, like polycarbonate canopy. This is a really, really good canopy if you're looking for something to house a camera in this, this T-style platform for like a whoop style board. Not so much a platform like this where you're like doing a 16 by 16 board. So this is a really, really nice canopy. It is hard as nails, and it really stands up to some serious abuse. For the most part, I already cracked that, but I hit something pretty hard to do that. The frame kind of looks like the Sailfly frame. I guess it's a clone frame from somebody else. I don't remember who it was, but it's an okay frame. It's not cut the best. It is pretty flexible in just about all the directions it shouldn't be, but this thing's light enough that I'm not really too worried about breaking a frame very easily. Of course, anything will break with enough momentum. The flight controller, it's the typical Happy Model Crazy Bee flight controller with the built-in SPI receiver for FR Sky. XT30 battery lead. Does not come with any batteries. Comes with one of these really, really terrible battery straps, but in this application, it actually works pretty good. And that's the gist of this quad. Out of the box, like I said, it flies okay. I was flying it on some GMB 3S 300 milliamp batteries, HV batteries. Works pretty good. It doesn't come with a SD card for the camera, obviously, but I really wasn't happy with the way it flew. The onboard receiver on these SPI flight controllers, I've had fairly decent experiences with them in the past if I use D8 mode over D16. In D8 mode, I could maybe get 50 yards. I switched to D16. I was lucky if I could get 10 yards out of it before I had a failsafe. The receiver in this particular model, the one that I have, is utterly horrible. Just flaming turd. Awful, awful reception. so I was forced to put in a separate receiver. Neat thing about this board is they must know that this thing really, really sucks because it comes with a pigtail already hanging out the back of it for power, or 5 volts, ground, and S-bus. So all you have to do is clip the end and solder in your receiver of choice. I'm using an XM Plus just because that's what I have on hand. If I had an XM receiver with the single antenna, I probably would have used that, but this is what I had. Give you a nice little space back here, really easy to zip tie that guy into place. And now fail-safes are not an issue whatsoever for me. This thing has all the range I'm ever going to need. The RC range is definitely going to outlast the FPV range. So that addresses the issue of actually being able to fly the dang thing any more than, a couple feet in front of you. So this thing flies, the reception's good now, but it still flies pretty not good. Not terrible, but not good at all. Not something I would want to, I didn't enjoy flying it the way it was tuned. So my process for tuning this was I spent a lot of time messing with the stock Betaflight profile that was on here. I think it was Betaflight 4.0.1. I probably spent 6 packs trying to tune this thing. Just really wasn't getting anywhere. So I went and I flashed Betaflight 4.1 and I got it tuned to be pretty darn good. But it still wasn't quite there. The response was kind of iffy. So I enabled bidirectional D-shot. These aren't BL Heli 32 ESCs, these are standard BL Heli S ESCs. So I flashed a JESC Firmware to the ESC on this, so I was able to enable bidirectional D-shot and RPM filtering on BL Heli S ESC that's built into this. And I'm telling you what, that made a night and day difference for my particular quad here. Now on the very top end, there's still a little bit of vibration, so when you go full stick, you're going to get a bit of jello in the FPV feed and in the HD feed. That is going to come down to just the limitations of the props that we have right now, especially running 3S. Once you get in those high RPMs, it does cause a bit of vibration. And that also brings me to the props. These are the HQ T3x2 props. A really, really good prop. Way better than what came with it. The props that came with it, they're not terrible, but I definitely don't prefer using those. I do like these better. I have some gem fans coming to give those a shot, but I feel like with the 3-inch prop, 3S, high RPM motors, we're gonna kind of experience that high-end vibration no matter what we do. So I'm going to jump over to the computer and I'm going to show you how I got this thing set up, or the fly the way it does, and you can see all my settings in there. And let's jump over to the computer right now. All right, folks, first thing we need to do is we need to download Betaflight Configurator 10.6.0. If you can't figure out how to do that, probably shouldn't be proceeding with this as it is. Anyways, make sure you have Betaflight 10.6.0 or newer installed, and we're going to need to flash Betaflight 4.1. Pretty easy to do. Connect your quad, get into the setup screen, and click Activate Bootloader DFU. When you do that, go ahead and hit Firmware, Update Firmware here on the right-hand side. Make sure you have selected Release and Release Candidate. Click on the Crazy Bee, F4, FR, HAMO. And make sure you flash a version of 4.1.0 or newer. Go ahead and click that, click Load Firmware, and flash firmware. Once you're done with that, it may say, do you want to apply custom defaults to this quad? Click yes. It'll dump a bunch of CLI command stuff in there, and then it'll restart. So now we're back here at the setup screen. We're going to want to go over to ports. Make sure we select serial RX for UART1 because I am using a external receiver, and for UART2, the peripheral, we want TBS Smart Audio selected. Make sure after all of these screens you hit save and reboot. Configuration. I'm going to come over here and make sure we're on DShot 600, 4K, 4K. I do not use any of this stuff, and if you use accelerometer, this may be too much for the quad to handle. S-Bus, because I'm using my own receiver. Craft name if you so choose to do that. Down here, make sure just air mode, OSD, anti-gravity, dynamic filter. Make sure you turn your D-Shot beacon tones on. That way we can use the motors as beeper. And over here, make sure we have D-Shot 600. Do not select bidirectional D-Shot yet. We'll get to that in a minute. Once we have this basic setup and go through, make sure your receiver's working, you set up your OSD and all that fun stuff, we're going to need to disconnect from Betaflight and go ahead and load up BL Heli Configurator. This is a plugin for the Chrome browser. Go ahead and hit connect. You're going to need a LiPo. Plug in your quad and hit read setup. And we want to make sure that our ESC firmware version has a H in the center. If it doesn't have an H, this is not going to work. We have an H, so we're good to go. We'll go ahead and disconnect that, and we can close the BL Heli Configurator. Now we're going to need to go over to JFlight Store. This is jflight.net. And we need to purchase a license for the JESC firmware. This is a 4.1 ESC, so we need to click on the center one here. Select add to cart. It's $549. It's not a whole lot of money, but I understand that this is purely optional. This is just to get that last little bit of performance out of your quad. Go ahead and pay for that. They're going to send you a link to verify everything. Then we need to go over to this here. Click on install instructions, and you're going to need to download the configurator. Once you download the configurator, just extract it how you would normally extract any other zip file. And we have it right here. Go ahead and load up JES Configurator. Make sure quad's still connected. Make sure Betaflight is closed. Make sure BL Heli suite is closed as well. So this looks a lot like BL Heli Configurator because of this right here, but it also says JESC Configurator. So go ahead and hit connect. If it's not connecting, try unplugging and resetting your board, and make sure you have all the other things that access that COM port closed, like BL Heli or Betaflight. Connect the LiPo and hit read setup. All right, so you're going to have to log in with the same information that you paid for the ESC firmware. First thing you're going to have to do is go ahead and hit flash firmware. So you can do flash all. It's going to go through, it's going to flash each ESC. Once that's completed, then you have to select flash all telemetry, and it's going to flash each ESC one more time. Once that's complete, go ahead and disconnect. You're going to hear some new tones from your ESCs. Jump back over to Betaflight, hit connect. You may need to cycle your connection. We're going to come back down to configuration. Now we're going to select bidirectional D-Shot. And again, make sure you hit save. Come on down to PID tuning. And I'm going to show you my tune. So Betaflight 4.1 makes this really easy. All you're going to do is move this master multiplier down to 0.8. Make sure you got I-term rotation enabled, I-term relax. Make sure this is all like this. We're going to go over to filter settings. Make sure you have gyro RPM filter enabled. Make sure this is 3 for harmonics, dynamic notch to low, and move these to the gyro filter multiplier and D-term filter multiplier up to 1.3. Be sure to save after each step. And then as far as rate profile goes, it's whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you like for your rates. Here, make sure you enable throttle limit to scale. And I'm at about 90%. This is really going to help out with that top end throttle vibration that you're going to see. And make sure we hit save. As far as all the other settings go, I'm just going to quickly flash through all these windows just so you can see it and see what I have set up. Your configuration may be different than mine. These are my modes. Be sure that your motors are spinning the proper direction before you go too far. And video transmitter, this is a new function of Betaflight 4.1 that you have to set up your own VTX tables. I recommend downloading the VTX table from the GitHub for smart audio, and then just customizing it like this. Only 2 power levels, 25 and 200. And that's really all you got to do. And that's about it. After this thing should fly pretty well. Just be sure that you go out and do your tests in a safe place. All right, as you can see, the Betaflight configuration is pretty straightforward. A little bit of funkiness doing that JESC firmware update, but it's not that hard. Yeah, you do have to pay for it, and that's okay. It makes a big difference. That guy that came up with that firmware, he had a lot of time and effort into it. And you know what? I think he deserves it. If you don't feel that way, well, don't do it. Let the market dictate what's right and what's not right. But for me, it made a big difference, and I'll probably be doing that to some other quads that don't have the BL Heli 32 ESCs on them, just to get a little bit more life out of them and to get the performance that I'm looking for. Now, as you see in that video, this thing flies pretty darn good. You can see that oscillation or the jello you get at the high throttle positions. If you want to tune that out, all you got to do is probably just start dropping your max throttle in Betaflight, and you could probably make it so you don't actually end up getting into that situation, or you could just control your throttle stick and not go ham on it. But anyways, yeah, this is a pretty good flying little quad. I really like it. It's too bad it didn't fly the way it does now out of the box. It's too bad you do have to buy a receiver for it. So whatever the price of this is, figure in a new receiver, because the SPI one is pure garbage. Don't even mess with it. You run the risk of losing your quad. Overall, I think this is actually a really good model. And if anything, if you destroy the frame, man, there's a lot of good parts in this thing for what it costs. There's a lot of good parts. Frames are super cheap for it, and there's a lot of other frames out there that you could transplant this guy into if you do inevitably destroy it. But it's pretty good. I like it. I can't give it 2 thumbs up out of the box, but with a little bit of work and following my guide, yeah, you'll have a good little model on your hands. All right, guys, if you like what I'm doing here, please like, subscribe. This was sent to me by Banggood for review. I really appreciate everything they do for me. They are what keeps me going. Please check out the product in the description below. That would really help me out. And what do you guys think? Do you, do you feel that this is a decent buy, or should we pass on it? I think if you're new into the hobby, maybe it's a pass. But these are all things that you're probably going to have to become acquainted with at some point in this hobby. All right, I will see you guys next time. Bye.